Thank you so much for listening to Weeknights on 5 Live as we try and bring some light to illuminate the dark nights. Let's catch up with a man whose knowledge of music covers the entire spectrum from Red Red Wine to Violet Hill, taking in Orange Juice, the Yellow Magic Orchestra, Green Day, Blue Oyster Cult and the Indigo Girls along the way. Thankfully for our Ofcom requirements, while his record collection's colourful, his language isn't. Is this man? Always tempted to jump in too early, but, you know, in front of a musicologist, you can't get that one wrong. Come in at the right time. He's our show's resident musicologist. It's Professor Joe Bennett from the Berklee College of Music in Boston. Good evening to you, Joe.
Hey there, Gordon. Great to speak to you again.
It's great to have you here, Joe. And been thoroughly enjoying all the clips you post up during the week. So please check Joe out on social media as well, because he is permanently just enjoying music, and it's a thrill to be involved in it, Joe. And thanks for being here tonight, because this is our regular hour-long appointment with Joe, where we listen to songs, take advantage of his expert ear to decipher the secrets of great music. And last week we were talking about music in the video games industry, a massive subject in itself. And of course, politics rudely intruded in the first half of the hour last week, so we thought we'd better give it a part two, a proper part two, like all the great films. The Godfather is an example. This one's going to be even better. So what's on the agenda tonight, Joe? How much of the video game music world have we got left to explore tonight?
Oh, it's huge, you know. I mean, I thought it was going to be pretty big, and then when I started diving down into the research, I just thought, oh my goodness, there is so much music. I mean, as a guide, the video games industry generally is about 5 or 6 times the size of the music industry worldwide. And actually, of that, mobile games is the biggest part of it these days. So, of course, there is so much culture and, for that matter, money going around in the industry that there's a lot of music that is made. And, you know, I'm sure of the 5 Live listeners, some will be gamers and will know what I'm talking about, and some may not be and might be thinking that video games maybe are a sort of niche part of popular culture. And they're really not. You know, they're right there in the center of the mainstream. And so that follows that there's a whole lot of music to get through tonight.
Oh no, Joe, you know what? There's a little secret for you, right? I'm going to break all the trust here, but I do a little bit of voiceover stuff, right? And I sit on the same agency as Ewan McGregor, just hoping that he turns stuff down that I get. And the one you want is the video game call-up, because that's the lucrative one, Joe. So hopefully, you know, at some stage, this might introduce us to a little bit of graft between you and me, Joe. So we'll see what comes of it. And Joe, a big compliment for you, actually, but before we get into this tonight, because my mum and dad listen regularly, and I think their life was blighted mainly in the 90s by us playing things like Sonic the Hedgehog and all the rest of it. But they thoroughly enjoyed your little guide through video game music last week. So on behalf of them, thank you very much for last week.
Oh, that's really nice. Yes, I realised that there must have been some game conversation between you and your brother, with him texting in live during the show and talking about games you argued over in the past. I love that.
Oh yeah, proper fights over California games in 1988 that ended up on a hospital trip. That's for another time. When we talk about video game music, though, Joe, we're talking about commercial songs that are featured in games, but also music that's specifically composed for video games. So how common is it for songs to be written for a game? Because we had a little flavour of it last week, didn't we?
Yeah, so I mean, basically video games in terms of scale, in terms of economic scale and logistics, they're kind of like movies. You know, if you ever read the credits on a AAA game, they scroll and scroll for minutes and minutes. And I know a lot of gamers skip that stuff. But yeah, it's a huge team. So it follows that it's actually kind of, it's more common certainly for the major big budget AAA games to commission original music. And, you know, where I used to live in Bath, we were up the road from Real World Studios, Peter Gabriel Studios. And, you know, a bunch of my students used to do internships there and record there and stuff. And, you know, they were obviously known for making great records, but they would also do video game music. Similarly, with a lot of the classic studios, you know, if you go to like Abbey Road today in London, you might see an album being recorded for the music market, but you're probably more likely to see a game soundtrack being recorded, because, you know, it's a lot to ask a symphony orchestra to show up. It's a lot of logistics and expense, and increasingly with full kind of full quality, what we used to call CD quality audio being in video games. It's no longer the plinky plonky 8-bit sound that we associate with the 80s
Yeah.
games. So they're just full bandwidth. They're as good as movie scores, both technically and artistically.
Yeah.
And to your question, yeah, nearly always original music.
Here's a question for you, Joe, and it's something I love about you because, of all the people in music who could be pretentious about it, you are an academic in the field, right? So you could quite easily turn your nose up at some of the daft questions I ask, but you never do. And I wonder how music that's composed for computer games is received more widely by the music community and by musicians. Is it something that's acknowledged and respected now?
Well, I think certainly by orchestral musicians, because you can go and see an orchestral concert with a full symphony orchestra playing, the music from Zelda or Modern Warfare or and any of those big games, because they're orchestral soundtracks. So I think certainly it keeps a lot of classical musicians in work. That's fair to say. Of course, in any style of music, you have some people who are snobbish about one style or another, or whether it's high art or low art. I don't care about any of that stuff, those cultural judgments. It's just, it either sounds great or it doesn't.
Yeah, it's as simple as that, and it does sound great, a lot of the stuff you're going to hear tonight. But before we get into the meat and the veg, we're going to do the quiz, Joe, because we've given everyone a little flavour about 20 minutes ago of your first question, but it might be good just to re-establish what we're doing with the quiz tonight.
Okay, so last week you'll recall I played a bunch of video games themes and, the gamers got the answers right and the non-gamers didn't. And I thought that was maybe a bit unfair on the non-gamers. So I've split the difference this week. These are all classic rock songs that appear in the Guitar Hero series of games. So they were classic rock hits before they were in the game. So the gamers will know them, but hopefully... if you have a good knowledge of your classic rock and particularly your guitar solos, you might have a shout as well. So you're going to hear 5 examples. I'm going to give you the date of the original and the name of the Guitar Hero game that it appeared in. And I'm going to play you just a bit of the guitar solo. So you're not going to hear any vocal. It's going to be forwards. I'm not going to give you all that evil backwards audio from previous sessions. I'm going to play you the example. You'll hear a bit of the guitar solo, and it's simply Name the Song.
Take it away, Joe.
Here we go. Question 1. This song was originally released in 2006. 1 year later, it appeared in Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock. Here's the guitar solo. Oh, that's coming through a little quiet. I think I'm going to just turn that up a little bit in my studio here. Give me 1 second. Should get a whole lot, because this is rocking, this one. Okay, here we go. Question 1. So the song is originally released in 2006. Here it is. Question 2. This song by a British artist was released in 1983. It appeared on the original Guitar Hero in 2005. Here's the solo. If the guitar seemed a little loud there, it's because it's actually footage from the game itself you were hearing there. Okay, so for number 3, this track was originally released by an American band in 1978. It also appeared in the first Guitar Hero in 2005. Just a one-note solo there. Question number 4. This song originally came out in 1977. It appeared in Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock in 2007. Here's the solo. Love the little time signature change in that one. And then number 5, finally, this track was originally released in 1984. It appeared on Guitar Hero World Tour 2008. Here's the solo. So there you have it. Classic rock fans and gamers have equal chance tonight.
You would never guess that Joe Bennett once worked for a guitar magazine, would you?
I love it. I love it.
He loves it. 85058 on text, 08085 909 693. Please do get in touch with your efforts. I found that really tough tonight, Joe, I can't lie. But get in touch, 85058 on text, and we'll give you a little reminder in about 40 minutes' time. But as we promised, we're going to pick up from last week's Gaming Music Edition, and we're starting with a video game with a very portentous name, The Elder Scrolls v Skyrim. Tell us about this one then, Joe, what we're about to hear.
Okay, so this is one of those sort of AAA major budget full orchestral tracks that we were talking about. So the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. So it's a massive open world adventure game, sort of a Dungeons and Dragons type universe, the fantasy province of Skyrim. So in the game, you become the Dragonborn. They call him the hero, and you have to battle dragons and shape the fate of the land. And you can kind of go anywhere, do anything, but obviously there's a lot of magic and fighting. Now, this piece of music is a good example of how deep the lore, that is Lore, the lore of these games can be. It's an entirely created universe. So listen carefully to the lyrics. You will not be able to translate them, because you're going to be listening. What language is that in? It's actually in the language of Draconic, or Dovahjul is the name of it in the game, which is a fictional language, and it's the language of the dragons. So I'm going to even attempt to give you the lyric. It's Dovakin, Nalok Zin, Los Varin, Valdin, Voko, Ma, Farak, Ast, Val, and on and on. And obviously the internet provides everything. You can find a full translation of it online from Dragon into English. It translates as Dragonborn by his honor is sworn to keep evil forever at bay. So the reason I wanted to sort of set it up in that way is don't freak out if you don't understand the words, because you don't speak Dragon.
Well, Joe, I'm so glad you did the pronunciation there, because that would have been beyond me. So let's have a little hear of The Elder Scrolls v Skyrim. There we go, The Elder Scrolls. Is that The Elder Scrolls 5? Have I got that right, Joe? No.
That's right. It's
Yes.
Skyrim. So Skyrim is what the gaming community would probably refer to it as.
Yes, there we go, Skyrim. So, and if you're ever in any doubt about the reach of these games and the music that goes with them, can you just tell us about the YouTube cover version, Joe?
Okay, so Skyrim, when it initially came out, hugely influential game on all the consoles. So at that time, it was the rise of YouTubers, 2010, 2011. So in 2012, some YouTubers that some listeners might remember, Lindsay Sterling, who's a musician, and Peter Hollins, who's a singer, did a YouTube cover version that since has achieved 91 million views. And they did the whole thing with human voice and violin with various studio tricks to make it sound full. And it's just, I think it's a really good early example of how the YouTube community can make these sort of homemade things that sound absolutely epic. And it's worth checking out the video. There's a whole video where they dress up in sort of sword and sorcery gear and run around a field brandishing violins at evil. So Lindsay Sterling and Peter Hollins, this is their version of Dragonborn.
It's epic, epic. And Joe, you know you've made it, don't you, when there's a YouTube ripoff or a YouTube tribute, maybe I should call it, is the correct terminology.
Absolutely, yes. You're at the center of popular culture when that happens.
Yes, you are. You are indeed. Now, your next example, Joe, comes from a rival radio station of sorts, Non-Stop Pop FM. And it's a station on Grand Theft Auto 5, which plays, among other things, Glamorous by Black Eyed P. Fergie. Have a little listen to this first of all.
Are you ready? If you ain't got no money, take your broke ass home. You say if you ain't got no money, take your broke ass home.
Glamorous, yeah. Glamorous. We flying first class up in the sky, popping champagne, living my life in the fast lane. I won't change by the glamorous. Ooh, flowers.
There we go. That's your Black Eyed P. Fergie there with a bit of music from Grand Theft Auto, a phenomenon of a game. And there's a bit of LA gangster glam vibes there, Joe.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Well, the fictional city where the Grand Theft Auto, when Grand Theft Auto 5 is set, it's called Los Santos, the Saints, as opposed to Los Angeles, the Angels. So it's a kind of, and that's really typical. That's a very gentle version of the sort of biting satire that appears throughout that game. It's an incredibly deep game. But for those who don't know it, the game itself is, again, another open world action adventure. And the players control one of three criminals, Michael, Franklin, and Trevor, as they carry out heists. And sometimes they collaborate, sometimes they do heists on their own. It's actually horribly violent. It's very much an 18-plus game. But, you know, for those who are into that sort of thing, it's very entertaining. And the Grand Theft Auto part of it is, of course, you steal cars. So you see an SUV or a Ferrari-alike or whatever it is that you like driving along the strip, and you just stand in front of it, stop it, drag the driver out, and drive off in the car. So when you do that, of course, the poor driver who you've thrown out into the street in your character has been listening to the radio, innocently minding their own business. So whenever you jump into a new car that you've stolen, the radio is already on from whatever that driver was listening to. And those who know the game will know that there's dozens of radio stations in the game, each of which you're looking for that voiceover work, Gordon. It has its own DJ. It has its own playlist, and often the music comes on at particular opportune times in the plot. Now, obviously, because this is about heists and you know, acquisitiveness, shall we say, is one of the main themes in the game. The lyric themes of Glamorous are actually perfectly suited to the game. We heard that the first verse of Fergie singing, "We fly in first class, up in the sky, popping champagne, living my life in the fast lane. I won't change by the glamorous," and so on. It's all sort of the trappings of bling and success and wealth and so on, and it just fits really well into the game narrative. On the music side, you know, it's a sort of mid pop, slightly hip hop track, and I was actually playing along to it earlier, and it's an incredibly simple chord loop. It grabs a guitar, it's an F, and then G and A minor. We're glamorous, glamorous, and it's just that chord loop all the way through, and that put me mindful of an argument I sometimes have with other music professors, particularly those who are into jazz. They'll often say, you know, that song sucks because it's only 2 bars of chords, or they're very simple chords. And, you know, for me, it doesn't matter in some forms of music. There are some forms of music that require complex harmony, and in song like that, particularly in a lot of hip hop, you don't want to be distracted by the harmony being overly sophisticated, which is why a lot of it in a lot of pop music today is very loop based. So it's a very sort of intoxicating loop, and the question for the producer when you're making a track like that is, how do you make it interesting for the listener? And the answer is, you drop instruments in and out, you do it through the arrangement, you do it through the vocal, you change textures and dynamics, and before you know it, you've listened to a 3.5 minute track, and you don't know that you've been hearing the same 2 bars of chords over and over again.
Yeah, never
So
bothered.
great track, fantastic vocal, and for those who've played the game, I'm sure it's putting you right back there.
Certainly did. And we should have mentioned, I don't know if you mentioned it there, Cara Delevingne was the guest DJ, wasn't she, on Non-Stop Pop FM. So yeah, it's just layers and layers of stuff to keep people fascinated while they're playing. I was going to say, yeah, 3 chords never troubled status quo, did they, Joe?
Well, indeed, there's been a whole lot of artists that go by on just as, what do they say, 3 chords and the truth.
That's all you need. That is all you need. Right, loved that. Up next, a very different sound and a tune from Legend of Zelda. And this was the one I was given a hard time about last week. And a particular instrument that a lot of people might not be familiar with. Now, what are we listening out for here, Joe? I know you've got a lot of instruments in your studio, and I've got a funny feeling you might own one of these.
I do. When I knew we were going to talk about this game, I scrambled around in my basement. I was like, where the heck is my ocarina? Yeah, it's one, when people know you're into music, people will buy you these gifts from time to time, and you pick stuff up in junk shops. I'm not even sure where I got my original one from. But so this is a rare opportunity to talk about the ocarina on the radio. So the game is merely a vehicle for me to sort of share my pro-ocarina bias with you, Gordon. Yeah. But the game is Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which came out in 1998. And all the Zelda games are part of the Nintendo console universe. So if you chose a different path, if you're an Xbox person or a PlayStation person, you probably wouldn't have played them. But they were hugely influential, and I love that the ocarina achieved a huge resurgence in sales after this game came out, in the same way as like guitars started selling when the Beatles came out. It was that influential. So a brief moment of musicology history, if I may, Gordon, on the ocarina.
And Joe, I've got to confess here, before you tell me this, I genuinely thought that ocarina was a fictional instrument devised for Zelda until this evening. I'm afraid. So yeah, sorry.
Well, no, it is. Well, it is kind of fictional as well. But so the ocarina, I'll first of all tell you what it is. It's basically it's made of clay or wood, usually clay, ceramic, and it has holes in it. So it's a bit like a sort of a stubby, bloated recorder, but not a tube. It's more of either a sphere, or it can be a slightly abstract shape, sort of an arrow shape. And actually, you mentioned social media, because people might not have seen one. If people find Joe Bennett Musicology on Instagram, you can see a picture of one there. So you imagine what they look like. But they've been around. They're one of the most ancient instruments. Originally, they were in ancient China about 7,000 years ago, and they were referred to then as the Xun. I think I pronounced that right. So Xun. And as time went on, many cultures independently evolved them. The Mayans and the Aztecs had them about 1,000 years ago, the modern ocarina that we know now really came from, I think, the Italians in the late 19th century. It was sort of invented at that time. And then actually, when people talk about the history of the ocarina, they talk about the Zelda years, because the game was so influential that people really went for it. So yeah, I've got one right here. It's made of ceramic. You can hear it. Hold it up to my microphone. Tink, tink, tink. And you hold it. It has only a small range. It's got, I think it's a major 10th, so it sort of goes from C to the E above, and it has 12 holes in it, and you cover them with your fingers like you would with a recorder. I'm going to just blow into it here and try and play you a little tune. So it's got a sort of recorder-like tone. And it's very satisfying to play. It's one of those instruments, a bit like the ukulele. It's very easy to pick it up and get started, but very difficult to master it and make it sound exquisitely beautiful.
Joe, that was one of my favourite moments on radio ever. Right? And I'm really sorry to do this, but can you do that again? Would you mind playing a little bit more? Because
Okay. I'm not a great ocarina player, and because my tuning isn't perfect. It's the tuning that really comes with lots of practice. Okay, so let's start with the scale. Here we go.
Joe Bennett, ladies and gentlemen, the most talented musicologist on the planet there, playing the ocarina, one of the many instruments that he can play. That was brilliant, Joe. Loved that. Now, before we find out a bit more, I thought we'd have a little listen to the song. And again, a big confession, this nearly made me fail university, this computer game. So let's hear a little bit of Legend of Zelda. Have a listen to this. There we go. That is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, 1998 on the N64, the Nintendo 64. Like I say, it very nearly disrupted my academic performance. In fact, it did, Joe. But it's I've got a question for you. Is the Ocarina featured in any contemporary music that we would know?
Oh, my goodness. Well, actually, if you're talking about classic rock, so we were talking earlier about classic rock. Weirdly, it plays the solo on Wild Thing by the Trogs. Unbelievably. For those who know that track, I don't have it queued up here, but you know that
No
classic
way.
song, Wild Thing.
Yeah.
Ching, ching. So the singer Reg Presley, there's a film of him doing it. He has a very basic ocarina. I think it's a pentatonic one, so 5 notes per octave. And that solo, do 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 do, that is an ocarina all the way through.
See, this
So,
every day is a school day, but particularly with Joe. That's amazing, Joe. And again, you know, like you say, that it had a big cultural effect. The instrument became popular as a result of the game.
Yeah, it really did. And now, because ocarinas are quite physically easy to make, they're very affordable instruments. So you can get like a kid's one for about £5 in a regular music shop. And then obviously there's a very small number of professional ocarina players in the world. And you can buy sort of a set of 12 in a case like you can harmonicas made of the finest materials. The one I have here is quite a nice one I got online. It's a ceramic one, but it's still, you know, it's about £30. So it's a lot more affordable than a lot of instruments, and you know, hours of fun.
Excellent, Joe. Well, we've had a message in actually. Janet and Morton says, Gordon, was Joe trying to be a clanger when he was playing his instrument, which I cannot spell? I think we know what you're getting at, Janet. And there's no reflection on Joe's playing because it was actually beautifully tuneful for me. Love that, Joe. Thank you so much. And that gets my brother off my back about Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Right, back to another very familiar pop star singing in a less familiar language. I think maybe you should explain, Joe, what we're trying to hear before we hear it this time, because this is Katy Perry, but not as we may know her.
Right. So this is the second of our made-up language songs of the night, Gordon. So the game is The Sims 3. So I think a lot of people will be familiar with The Sims. You have these little people that you can control, and you can like, buy houses for them, and they can have jobs and fall in love and have families. And my kids played it when they were young, and it's very immersive. In fact, I won't say which of my kids actually still plays it in her 20s, but it can really stick with you, The Sims. So there is pop music throughout The Sims, but all of the lyrics, it kind of sounds like regular pop music, but all of the lyrics are in the language of the game, which is referred to as Simlish. And because The Sims was such a phenomenon in the sort of 2000s, so commercially successful and so famous, that a bunch of pop stars were asked to actually sing their hits. But in order to be within the fiction, the sort of universe of the game, they couldn't sing them in English. They had to sing them in Simlish. And not just, we're going to hear Katy Perry, which I think is a great example of it, but other artists, Lily Allen, unbelievably My Chemical Romance, Black Eyed Peas, you know, you can find them all in The Sims singing their hits in Simlish. But you are going to hear the the version of Katy Perry singing it. And obviously, the internet's a wonderful place. You can find all of the Simlish lyrics online. So the verse opens with Zerpa stambi imbi bweb zerka pawi imbaheb nifla abba reboru fuika minzo ebafu. And it goes on through the pre-chorus, and then you'll hear the title hook, which is "Last Fruby Noop." So let's play it until we get to "Last Fruby Noop." Go on.
Excellent. Right, let's have a little listen to this. This is Katy Perry and Last Fruby Noop, Simlish, Last Friday Night. There we go. Last Fruby Noop. Joe, we've heard you recite some tricky lyrics, but yeah, Simlish, that's a new one on me. I don't think I've heard that before, because that's sort of peak Katy Perry time as well. I was heavily involved in writing about Katy and interviewing around that time, about 2010.
It was 2010. So Katy Perry, for many people, that is the definitive Katy Perry album, Teenage Dream from 2010. You know, everyone an absolute banger. There's so many great songs on that album. The title track, Teenage Dream, Firework, California Girls, and of course, last Friday Night that we heard there. So it, you know, she was a huge star at the time. Actually, having had a few career false starts, and Max Martin really believed in her. So that was so Last Friday Night. The original was produced by Dr. Luke and Max Martin, who are also co-writers of the song with Perry and Bonnie McKee, and it's just a beautifully constructed pop song, you know, regardless of its connection to the game, which is kind of fun. It's just it's really, I think, is probably for me the definitive track of that era of commercial American pop, 2010. And you know, I think those tracks still stand up pretty well 14 years later.
They definitely do. Yeah, they certainly do. And that's the rubber stamp from Professor Joe. Love that. Now, your next track tonight is an Eminem track for the war game Call of Duty, called appropriately Survival. Let's have a listen.
Wasn't ready to be no millionaire. I was ill prepared. I was prepared to be ill though. The skill was there. In the beginning, it wasn't about the ends. It was about busting raps and standing for something. Fucking acronym. Cut the fucking act like you're happy. I'm fucking back again with another anthem. Why stop when it doesn't have to end? It ain't over till I say it's over. Enough when I say enough. Throw me to the wolves and close the gate up. I'm afraid of what'll happen to them wolves when the thought of being thrown into an alligator pit. I salivated it. Raiders up. Hands up like it's 12 noon. Dislocator, rotator cuff, came up rough, came to ruffle feathers, now egos, I ain't deflating. The last chance to make this whole stadium in rust.
So there we go, Joe. It's a bit like Lose Yourself, isn't it? But it's got some extra power chords in there. And I think one of the first nights of musicology was intro music, and that definitely gives you the sense of a boxer or a wrestler doing some walk-on behaviour. You know, it's got that big epic feel to it. It's great, that, Joe, isn't it?
Oh, you're taking me right back to the first time we did this, on January 1st. I remember now, we looked at sports themes, all that stuff with walk-on music. So it's very much, I'd never thought of it that way, but it's sort of military walk-on music for your character in Call of Duty, which I think most people know is, again, rather violent 18-plus first-person shooter. And those tracks, those bits of walk-on music that we talked about, you'll recall they tend to be either big rock or big hip-hop. And, I think this one sort of is right down the middle because obviously he's rapping. And you've got this riff. And again, grab a guitar and let's go through the riff. So we're in G minor, G5 sort of thing. So the riff is G, F, B flat, C, D. So re, 3, 4, this, dum, da, 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 which had only just occurred to me a couple of days ago is pretty close to Blur's Song 2.
Yeah.
Woohoo! I only just thought about that one, but hey, it's very difficult to copyright a chord progression.
Excellent, Joe. I mean, again, I love it when you unpick things like that. Brilliant.
Well, and it just fits the themes of the game. It's kind of macho. It's about survival. It's sort of aggressive, and that's the character. So, again, like so many of these appropriated games, when you put it in the game world, it's a hugely immersive part of the player's experience. And as you say, a bit like walk-on music.
Excellent stuff, Joe. Loved that. Now, the next one it resonates with me because it was really, really popular with my son. Something from the gaming behemoth that is Fortnite, an absolute obsession for a lot of kids and the bane of parents across the globe. This song is a collaboration between DJ Marshmello and the band Bastille. Let's take a listen.
And I'm left there with my thoughts and the image of you being with someone else. Well, it's eating me up inside. But we ran our course, we pretended we're okay. Now if we jump together, at least we can swim far away from the wreck we made. Then only for a minute I want to change my mind, 'cause this just don't feel right to me. I wanna raise your spirits, I want to see you smile, but no, that means I'll have to leave.
There we go, a collaboration between DJ Marshmello and the band Bastille. So Joe, tell us about the song, because it's had a couple of streams, hasn't it?
Yes, I like to clock the streaming stats, Gordon.
Yep.
That one's just past 2 billion on the streaming services. So, with the modern stuff, often it can sneak up on us of just how popular these songs become. So the reason that there's a gaming connection there is quite interesting. So Marshmello, who you mentioned, collaborated there with the band Bastille. He was the first person to do a live gig in Fortnite, in the Fortnite universe. So he would go there and the gamers could log on, and the only way you could see that Marshmello gig was through being in the game world, and it was streamed live. So it was an avatar of him playing his set, and that song, Happier, which is one of his biggest songs, was in the set. So apart from the interesting video game connection, I just love the song anyway, and it's with a song like that, because there's so much going on in the arrangement, it's got that big secondary hook, it can be tempting to sort of miss the lyrics, but it's a really poignant story. Lately I've been thinking, I want you to be happier, I want you to be happier. And it's the narrator's in the dregs of a relationship that's pretty much over. And he realizes he has to let his significant other go because by being with him, she's not happy. And it's essentially, if you love somebody, set them free. So it's got this incredible, and Bastille are very good at doing this. You end up with these really big choruses and great big hooks, but actually there's often a rather poignant story at the center of it.
Yeah,
and it's also interesting from a songwriting, song structure point of view. So you've got that hook, dum 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 dum, which is some songwriters refer to as a secondary hook. It's a catchy bit that isn't sung by the vocal, and it comes in after the chorus. I want to see you smile, but no, that means I'll have to leave. And then we hear the riff again, and then he repeats the line, I know that means I'll have to leave. So the song is kind of dovetailed. The form and the hooks are sort of glued together so that you're not really sure where one section ends and the next one begins. It's really clever.
Yeah, Dan from Bastille's an incredibly talented man as well. Joe, it reminds me, my son and his classmates, in lockdown used that song and cut up all these videos of themselves playing instruments for their teacher, Mrs. Harewood, to say thanks for seeing them through that year of lockdown with all the digital sort of the Zoom lessons that they had and all the rest of it. And the song, just like you say, the sentiment of the lyrics is lovely, isn't it? And it means an awful lot to people, and I think that's reflected in the 2 billion streams it's had. So yeah, I'm so pleased you chose that one tonight. And we won't have the conversation about how Fortnite causes rage quits and anger in young kids and all that. That's for another show, another 5 Live show. Right, a lot of music associated with gaming can seem a little throwaway as well, Joe, but that's certainly not the case with our next track, because it's a Grammy winner after all. Tell us a little bit about Baba Yetu.
Okay, so Baba Yetu is it's our only track in Swahili tonight, and it comes from the game Civilization 4. And again, for those who don't know the games, it's a sort of a world-building game. It's a turn-based strategy game in the lingo. Your player leads a civilization from prehistoric times into the future. And you can use diplomacy, technological advancement, cultural dominance, or military conquest to build your empire. And you manage economics, the military, technology, and culture, and you interact with other civilizations controlled by the game's AI. But of course, you have all your people running around and building things and living their lives and farming. And a lot of the time, this music, Baba Yetu, is sort of representative of the people, of the mini people that appear in the game. And actually, musically or lyrically, it's a Swahili adaptation of the Lord's Prayer. So it's got a real sort of interesting cultural crossover with obviously Christian history and lore as well. But mainly it's just really lovely to listen to.
Excellent. Let's have a little listen then. This is Baba Yetu and Professor Joe's latest selection. Baba Yetu.
Baba yetu yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu amina. Baba yetu yetu liye jina lako litukuzwe.
Baba yetu liye mbinguni yetu yetu amina. Baba yetu liye jina lako litukuzwe.
Tupe leo chakula chetu tunachohitaji, utusamehe makosa yetu.
Beautiful stuff. Baba Yetu, and that's from Civilization 4. Joe, what a lovely selection. Really, really lovely selection tonight. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And we've got so much more we could do. We've got some messages I was going to share with you, though, Joe. This is just fantastic from Professor Joe tonight. This feature on a Monday night keeps getting better. Thank you very much for that, Kim. And a question for Joe. Wasn't David Bowie the first star musician to compose for computer games? And in brackets, Jonathan.
I don't know whether he was, whether that's true. I'm sure it is, but I don't have that fact off the top of my head. But I do know that Bowie was famously ahead of his time about all things tech. Mm-hmm. There is a fantastic video interview of him from the late 90s where he basically said the internet is coming and you have no idea how it's going to change the world. And it's great to find that clip. You can find it online now, because the interview is kind of skeptical that this new tech's coming along and this pop stars saying how we should think about it. And of course, he was proved absolutely right. It changed lives in absolutely immeasurable ways.
Pretty sure Jeremy Paxman, actually, wasn't it Newsnight, I think, back in the day?
I think you're right, actually. Paxman, yes. I'm remembering, And of course, he's Dr. David Bowie of Berklee College of Music. We gave him an honorary doctorate in the late 90s, and he gave an incredibly entertaining speech, as you might expect.
Amazing. And another message here, Joe. One of Paul McCartney's best songs of recent years is Hope for the Future from a computer game. And you played it last week, didn't you, Joe? I think Destiny. Yeah. Is that right?
Destiny 2014. Yeah, the very first Destiny. And what a great McCartney track, and one you don't hear very often.
Yeah, it was excellent. A great composition. Now, Joe, I think there are a few things that we want to do, but I think before we get into an explanation of an earworm and a song that we can bring up from last week that sounds like something else, somebody suggested that. I wonder if we just quickly go back through the quiz clues just so anybody can get caught up on them. We've had a couple of efforts, but maybe we should give them a little refresher on the quiz.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because it's a little bit hard tonight. You either know your rock solos or you don't. So here's a quick fire recap of the quiz. Here we go. Question 1. This track originally came out in 2006 and featured in Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock in 2007. Here's the solo. Name the song. Question 2. This British artist came out with this track in 1983. It featured on the original Guitar Hero in 2005. Here is the solo. Question 3. This American band had a hit with this song in 1978. It also appeared on the original 2005 Guitar Hero. Here's the riff. Question 4. This rock classic came out in 1977 and it was featured on Guitar Hero 3 Legends of Rock in 2007. Here's the solo. Question 5. This very up-tempo rock classic was released in 1984, American band, and appeared in Guitar Hero World Tour in 2008. There's the quiz.
There we go, Joe. Fantastic stuff. Right, get your pen and paper ready and try and fill them in. People are having a stab at this, Joe. In fact, there's a confession. David and Leighton Buzzard, 0 out of 5 for me tonight. Well, David, it's the one I've struggled with the most so far as well. We're 4 months into this. Right, okay, Joe, this have a little look at your other side of your day job, and that's providing expert analysis on songs in copyright disputes. Of course, this is no court of law, and I'm not Judge Judy, but we do take a moment when we have the time to talk about sound-alike tracks. Now, those songs you hear and you think, that sounds just like another song. And we've got the perfect person tonight to run the rule over the music just to see how similar they are. Now, if you've got any in mind, please let us know. Gordon@bbc.co.uk. You can text us as well, 85058. Tonight's Sound-alike has a really fascinating story behind it as well, and it was suggested last week by a listener. So, Joe, what are the 2 tracks up for consideration tonight?
The tracks are In the Summertime from 1970 by Mungo Jerry. A lot of people know it. And the other song is The Push Bike Song, also from 1970 by the Australian band The Mixtures. And my goodness, there is a complicated story here to share, Gordon. But before we share that story, I'll play you a little bit of each song. For context, In the Summertime by Mungo Jerry came out in May 1970, and The Push Bike Song came out in December 1970. So let's start with the earlier one. This is In the Summertime by Mungo Jerry.
See what you can find. If a daddy's rich, take her out for a meal. If a daddy's poor, just do what you feel.
And then later in 1970s, The Mixtures, Australian band, came out with this song, The Push Bike Song.
Riding along on the push bike, honey, when I'm
missed you. Riding downtown in a hurry, honey. Down South Avenue, you look so pretty as you were riding along. You look so pretty as you were singing this song.
So why do they sound similar? You know, if you put them back to back, melody for melody, they're not the same at all. They're in different keys, but that doesn't matter a whole hill of beans. But they are objectively different melodies and different lyrics. But lots of people, including many music journalists, have said they're very similar songs. One's influenced by the other, and I think the reason is that they both have that vocal, what you might call early beatboxing, that stuff going on. There's similar tempo. They're both major pentatonic, so do 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 da 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 do 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 do. Use a lot of the same notes, but as Eric Morecambe used to say, not necessarily in the same order. But they sound similar production. They've got that sort of homespun. The Mungo Jerry track features a banjo, and it's sort of an implied banjo in the Mixtures song. But here's the fun thing. The Pushback song came from a Mixtures album called In the Summertime. And the Mixtures also had a version of In the Summertime, which sounds like this.
In the summertime when the weather is hot.
Just complete, exact carbon copy of the Mungo Jerry version. And the reason is connected with industrial action, would you believe? So here's, we're getting short of time, Gordon, so I'll give you the short version. In 1970, the Federation of Australian Commercial Broadcasters imposed a ban on the broadcasting of imported records. It was due to a copyright dispute over royalties. And it was, Australians referred to it as the record ban. It lasted for several months, mid-1970 to early 71. So Australian radio stations were not allowed to play non-Australian records for a few months at that time. So, of course, May 1970, In the Summertime by Mungo Jerry is a huge hit all over the world. Lots of people love it. It's the summer banger of its time, and they couldn't play it. So by December 1970, the Mixtures came up with their album and released it, and both songs were on their album. The final beautiful postscript, in 1990, Mungo Jerry did a cover version of the Pushback song. Sounds like this. And you get the idea. What goes around comes around.
That's absolutely brilliant. We've got an email on this, actually, Joe. Hello, Gordon and Professor Joe. You mentioned that you might be talking about the Pushbike song in the Musicology Hour. So I wondered if you would give an honourable mention to this single's fabulous and unusual B-side, Who Loves Ya? It's an amazing classical proggy orchestral instrumental track with a lovely change of mood in the middle, heralded by a great drum break. Totally unexpected, but once heard, never forgotten. As children in the 70s, my sister and I bought the Pushbike song to dance around the living room to, but as soon as we discovered the B-side, we spent many happy hours inventing elaborate rock ballets inspired by this weird and wonderful track. Actually, says Catherine in Cornwall, how about a whole show on interesting B-sides sometimes? All good wishes to you both. Absolutely adore the show. Well, Catherine in Cornwall, thank you so much for that kind message. It's lovely. And there's a suggestion for you, Joe, for the weeks ahead. B-sides?
I love that. B-sides. Back to the days of singles. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's definitely have a look at that. I've got a few suggestions up my sleeve already. So, Catherine, thank you very much for that message. And thanks to everybody who's entered the competition tonight as well. Joe, I wonder if you want to start by giving us the answers. We don't need to hear the tracks again because we're probably running out of time. But I think if you went through just the names of the tracks is probably enough.
Let's do it. Okay. So the first one was Through the Fire and Flames by Dragon Force from 2006. Number 2, Bark at the Moon by Ozzy Osbourne. Bark at the Moon. Number 3 was I Wanna Be Sedated by the Ramones from 1978. Number 4 was Barracuda by Heart. And we ended there with Van Halen's Hot for Teacher.
There we go. So I can tell you, Joe, Mike in the studio tonight, 3 out of 5. I have to confess, I got a 0 out of 5 tonight. I struggle with it. Wrong guesses. The Wind Cries Mary by Jimi Hendrix from JC in South London. No. Dave and Leighton Buzzards also confessed to the 0 out of 5. But we have a winner tonight, Joe, and it deserves a special mention because Ashley got 5 out of 5. So I think, Joe, that deserves a special pat on the back from you.
Absolutely. Well done, Ashley. Let me see if we can Give Ashley a little bit of an ocarina trill. Here we go. There we go. Well done, Ashley. Fantastic.
In fact, Joe, from this day forth, if you do well and get 5 out of 5, and you're the only person to do it, you get a Professor Joe Bennett Ocarina solo. Joe, thank you so much for your time tonight. I've thoroughly enjoyed it once again, and hopefully we'll catch up again next week.
Looking forward to it. Speak to you then.
There he is, Professor Joe Bennett. That was absolutely fascinating. And it looks like we might be having a look at B-sides at some point in the future, so feel free to send in your suggestions for Joe to turn his attention to 85058. And remember, earworms and sound-alikes his other expertise. He is fantastic at it. Right, the World Football phone-in is coming right up. Johnny Ianson is sitting in for Doughton. Before I go, a very quick thanks to Tavy, Mike for getting us on air, to Al, to Sam, to Kay for programme production, and of course to the big boss man, Phil Wells, for guiding us through a busy night in politics. Thank you most of all, though, for listening. Johnny's up after the news and sport.
The voice of the UK. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.